Restaurants are charging more than ever, yet dining rooms are emptier than ever. That difference sits at the center of today's eating out experience. Fast food meals that once felt like a low-cost choice now feel like a money choice. Normal dining, once a weekly habit for working families, more and more feels like a special treat. And for millions of Americans, eating out has quietly changed from easy to a trade-off. For years, rising menu prices were blamed on price increases, then on worker shortages, then on supply problems. But even as main price increases have cooled, restaurant prices have stayed high. The discomfort people feel when looking at a menu today is not made up. Data shows that restaurant price rises have gone far beyond what customers expected, and in many cases, what pay can support. This video is not about blaming servers, cooks, or small business owners trying to stay open. And it is not about missing some perfect past that never existed. It is about understanding how an industry that was built on low cost, speed, and same quality slowly left those ideas, not by mistake, but on purpose. Behind empty tables and rising prices sits a deeper built-in problem. Company joining reshaped competition. Cost pressures were pushed down onto workers and out onto customers. And the restaurant industry quietly changed from a service business into a money tool made for profit, speed, and owner returns. By the end of this video, you will understand why restaurants feel empty, why prices keep rising anyway, and why this problem goes far beyond price increases. To understand why eating out feels so broken today, it helps to remember what restaurants in America were made to be. They were not high-end experiences. They were not places for extra enjoyment or showing status. Restaurants, especially in the United States, started as a practical answer for a growing working population that needed food that was low-cost, fast, and the same every time. While France is often given credit for shaping the early idea of the restaurant as a choose-what-you-want experience, American dining culture grew in a very different way. As cities grew and factory work increased, the focus moved away from fancy and toward speed. The goal was simple: feed people quickly, the same way and at a price that made sense for everyday life. This is the background in which fast food started. Early chains were not praised because they were cheap in the sense of low quality. They were praised because they gave good worth at large size. McDonald's became famous for proving that a family of 4 could be served in under a minute for less than $1. That promise was not about extra enjoyment. It was about trust. You knew what you were getting, how long it would take, and what it would cost, and that mattered to working families. In this early model, low cost was not a selling trick. It was the base of the business. Prices were set with the customer's real life in mind, not with the goal of getting the most amount someone might pay on a given day. Restaurants succeeded by serving more people, not by getting more money out of each single visit. This way also created space for local diners, family-owned spots, and neighborhood cafes to do well. Eating out was not a treat. It was part of daily life. And just as important, part of community life. But that model needed something easy to break control. It needed businesses to put long-term trust over short-term profit. And as the industry grew larger, more money-focused, and more joined, that control slowly went away. The low-price menu was never meant to be a trick. It was the natural next step of the restaurant industry's original promise. As fast food chains grew through the 1960s and 70s, they found something strong. Lowering prices did not just bring customers, it trained habits. When people knew they could eat quickly, low cost, and without surprise, restaurants became part of daily habits rather than a sometimes treat. One of the most famous examples was the Egg McMuffin, brought out across the country in 1975 at 63 cents. It gave McDonald's access to a whole new time of day. Breakfast was not just another meal, it was a habit-making chance. The Happy Meal followed a similar idea. Priced at $1, it became the most low-cost choice for working families and quietly locked in brand trust from a young age. When changed for price increases, these items were much cheaper than anything like them today. But as the industry grew older, the low-price menu turned into a competition fight. Through the 80s and 90s, McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's all raced to offer the lowest possible prices. On the outside, buyers gained. Under that outside, the money side began to break. Profit space thinned. Worker money plans were squeezed. Quality quietly went down. What had once been about giving good worth started to turn into giving the cheapest possible product. This race to the lowest created a built-in problem. Customers were trained to expect low prices, but the system supporting those prices was no longer able to last. Independent restaurants could not compete with national chains that could take short-term losses. Owners with rights were trapped between company pricing rules and rising costs. And the industry more and more depended on understaffed kitchens and underpaid workers just to keep the look of low cost. By the early 2000s, the results were clear. The low-price menu had worn down the money base of the restaurant business. And instead of rebuilding that base, the industry chose a different path. Prices would finally rise, but competition would shrink. The promise of low cost would stay in selling words, even as it went away in real life. That choice did not just change menus, it changed the whole setup of American dining. By the early 2000s, fast food was no longer just a type. It was an empire. McDonald's ran nearly 30,000 locations worldwide, almost 3 times the size of Burger King, and roughly 5 times larger than Wendy's. Subway grew fast from roughly 13,000 restaurants in 2000 to more than 20,000 just 5 years later. Across normal dining, breakfast chains, and quick service growth became the main way to grow. On the outside, this looked like plenty. More locations, more brands, more choices. In reality, something very different was happening. Ownership was joining, decision-making was centering, and competition, the kind that actually pushes prices down and improves quality, was quietly going away. As national chains grew, locally owned restaurants found themselves trapped. They could not get the same supply deals. They could not spread risk across thousands of locations, and they could not survive long price fights made to protect market share rather than profit. Many closed, others were bought. The result was a dining picture that felt full but offered fewer real choices. Nowhere was this more clear than in the going away of the traditional American diner. Once the base of working-class life, diners gave low-cost sit-down meals and a place to stay. By the mid-2000s, their numbers had fallen a lot about price. It is about control. When businesses fear losing customers to a better choice, they are forced to improve. When those choices go away, pricing power grows. Chains no longer had to ask what a meal should cost. They could focus on what the market would accept. And that acceptance grew not because buyers were happier, but because they had fewer places to go. The look of choice hid the reality of joining. And while restaurants were becoming more centered, the real tight point of the system was forming even higher up the chain. Because the most powerful joining was not happening in dining rooms. It was happening in the supply chain. When people think about why restaurants are costly, they usually focus on what they can see. Menu prices, tipping screens, smaller amounts. What rarely enters the talk is where those meals actually begin. Long before food reaches a kitchen, a small number of companies have already decided how much it will cost, and how much control restaurants truly have. In the United States, the meat supply is controlled by 4 companies: Tyson Foods, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef. Together, these firms control roughly 85% of beef processing. That level of joining is not by chance. In the early 1980s, the market was far more spread out. Over the following years, joining, buying, and rule changes allowed a small group of firms to take competitors and center processing power. This matters because food costs are not just another line item for restaurants. Protein is often the single largest input cost on a menu. When supply becomes joined, pricing power moves upstream. Restaurants are no longer talking in a competition market. They are price takers. And when wholesale prices rise even a little, those increases move through the entire system. Studies and legal cases over the years have claimed planned supply cuts and price control in highly joined meat markets. No matter the legal results, the money effect is clear. When fewer firms control production, supply becomes less able to change and prices become harder to push down. Restaurants, especially small and independent ones, are left with little choice but to raise menu prices simply to stay open. The effect does not stop at restaurants. Farmers are squeezed from the other side. Data from the United States. Department of Agriculture shows a big drop in the number of hog farms, falling from well over 200,000 in the early 1990s to roughly 71,000 by 2009. As smaller producers went away, factory farming became the main model, putting size and speed over ability to change or quality. This joining created a weak system. It produces food cheaply on paper, but at the cost of ability to change, competition, and clear information. When problems happen, whether from sickness, weather, or moving, Prices rise quickly and come back down slowly, if at all. In this setting, restaurant price rises stop being a short-term answer to problem. They become built into the setup of the industry. And once prices rise to protect profit, there is little reason to bring them back down. As costs moved upstream and competition thinned, something else quietly changed on the plate. Even as menu prices climbed, the quality of food served in many restaurants went down. This was not always clear at first. Amounts looked similar, packaging improved. Selling became more smart. But in nutrition and makeup, meals were becoming more processed, more calorieful, and less clear. A 2018 study comparing chain restaurant meals in the United States and the United Kingdom found that more than 95% of menu items went over suggested nutrient limits in at least one area, such as salt, bad fat, or sugar. Children's meals were especially worrying in both countries. The large majority failed to meet basic nutrition rules. These findings were not about treat foods. They showed standard menu items sold as everyday food. This drop in quality is not by mistake. Highly joined supply chains favor same quality and long shelf life over fresh. Processed parts, fillers, and pre-made pieces reduce worker costs and lower waste. But they also move food away from what customers think they are paying for. When nearly every major chain depends on the same factory suppliers, difference goes away even as prices rise. What makes this change especially hard is the timing. Buyers are paying the highest prices in history for restaurant meals, yet getting food that is often more processed than ever before. Ingredient lists grow longer. Nutrient worth goes down. Clear information becomes harder to find. The special feel once linked with eating out better parts, careful making, and variety goes away. From a business view, this way makes sense. Cutting quality is often easier than cutting prices. From a buyer view, it feels like breaking trust. People are not upset simply because food is costly. They are upset because the worth equation no longer adds up. And as trust goes away, so does how often they go. When meals cost more and give less, dining out becomes easier to skip. Empty tables are not a mystery in this background. They are a reasonable answer. The question then is why the industry keeps going this way. The answer lies in how success is measured at the top, and who is expected to take the cost when the system does not work. As restaurant prices climbed and food quality went down, the industry framed the problem as unavoidable. Worker costs were rising, profit space was thin. Customers, we were told, simply had to change. But a closer look at how money moves through the system tells a different story. One where the weight of not working well is not shared the same. Across company America, the average chief leader now earns more than 300 times the pay of a normal worker. In the restaurant industry, that difference becomes even more extreme. At Starbucks, the chief leader's pay recently came close to nearly 7,000 times that of the normal worker. This is not a show of a business barely staying open. It is proof of a system that puts leader pay first even as prices rise and service goes down. Rather than fixing pay setups directly, many restaurant chains chose a different answer. Move the problem to the customer. Tipping once kept for full-service dining has spread into nearly every part of the industry. Digital payment screens now ask for extra pay at fast normal counters, drive-thrus, and even self-service machines. The expectation has quietly moved toward a 20% base no matter the setting. This change changes the feeling of dining out. Customers are no longer just paying for food. They are helping worker costs in real time, often without clear idea about where that money goes. Restaurants can show lower menu prices while depending on social pressure to close the gap. For workers, pay becomes less sure. For customers, every meal feels more costly than the price on the board shows. What is clear is that this way treats signs rather than causes. High leader pay stays untouched. Built-in not working well stays not fixed, and instead of rethinking a broken model, the industry leans harder on the one group with the least power to push back. Over time, this wears down good feeling. Dining out stops feeling like a service and starts feeling like a duty full of guilt and hard feeling. When customers wait, skip meals out, or walk away completely, it is not because they no longer value restaurants. It is because the system has made joining feel taking. And that feeling helps explain why so many dining rooms, despite higher prices, stay half empty. Restaurants are not empty because people suddenly stopped enjoying food or meeting others. They are empty because the money no longer works. When a basic fast food meal often costs more than $10 and a normal sit-down dinner can easily go over $45 per person, eating out stops being normal. It becomes a choice weighed against rent, food shopping, gas, and health bills. For many years, restaurants filled a middle place between need and treat. They were places to meet, to rest, to connect. That role needed easy access. When prices rise faster than pay and worth goes down, easy access goes away. People do not complain loudly, they change. They cook more, they skip going out. They keep dining out for birthdays and special times rather than weekly habits. This change has culture results. Traditional diners, cafes, and neighborhood spots were not just businesses. They were social places. They gave spaces where people stayed, talked, and felt part of something larger than themselves. As those places went away, they are often replaced by drive-through lines, delivery apps, and machine ordering, fast but alone. From a business view, machine work and digital ordering make sense. They lower worker costs and increase speed, but they also take away dining of its meeting dimension. When talking is lowered and speed is put first, restaurants become just deals, and deal experiences are easier to leave when prices rise. The strange part is that many chains answer emptier dining rooms by raising prices more. With fewer customers, they try to protect money by getting more from each staying visit. This short-term idea speeds up the very problem it is meant to fix. Higher prices drive lower how often, which leads to even higher prices. In this background, empty tables are not a mystery or a short time. They are a sign. They show a growing space between what restaurants charge and what people feel they get in return. And unless that space is fixed, no amount of selling or menu change will bring customers back the same way. The question is whether another way still exists or whether low cost and community have become not possible with the modern restaurant business. Despite the built-in pressures changing the restaurant industry, not every business has chosen the same path. A small number of restaurants continue to work under a different idea, one that puts long-term trust over short-term taking. These businesses are not free from rising costs or supply chain pressures. What sets them apart is how they answer. Instead of asking how much customers are willing to pay, these restaurants start with a different question. What price allows as many people as possible to eat here often? That thinking leads to hard choices. Profit space is thinner. Growth is slower. Leader. Pay is controlled. Growth comes from serving more customers, not from getting more money out of each deal. In real terms, this often means accepting lower profits in exchange for lasting. Parts are chosen with care even when cheaper choices exist. Workers are treated as a long-term money put in rather than a cost to lower. Prices are raised slowly and clearly, not when chance comes. The goal is lasting, not control. What is important to understand is that this model is not working well. It is simply not possible with the wants of Wall Street. Public markets reward 3-month growth, fast growth, and profit making better. Businesses that choose control struggle to get outside money because their success cannot be easily grown or money-focused. As a result, these restaurants stay rare. They stay open through community help, trust, and a shared understanding of worth. When customers feel respected rather than taken from, they return, not because prices are the lowest, but because the connection feels fair. This other way does not fix the industry's problems on its own. It cannot change joining or fix broken supply chains. But it shows something key. The current state of dining is not something that had to happen. It is the result of choices. And choices, even built-in ones, can be thought again. What is happening in restaurants is not just about food. It is about how everyday life quietly becomes more costly. Company joining lowered competition. Broken reasons rewarded taking. And restaurant price rises turned eating out from normal into a money choice. Empty dining rooms are not a mystery, they are a sign. When prices rise faster than worth, people step back. Not because they do not care, but because the system no longer works for them. If this breakdown helped you see the problem more clearly, consider supporting the businesses that still choose people over numbers. When was the last time eating out actually felt worth it?